This video is all about how to take inspiration from other artists without resorting to swiping. So in this video, I want to go ahead and show you how you can take poses, alter them and make them your own, and then find different sources to help reference and combine anatomy, then finally a whole other artistic source for lighting and bringing it all together. This is the right way to use reference, picking up bits and elements from other artists and then incorporating it into your own work without just copying what they've done. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business, and to do it all incredibly easily. So we're going to go ahead and start with a heroic male figure, and I have him kind of flying toward us. He's basically floating in the air, and I found a great reference picture from Alan Davis. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm just going to do it in a very simple wireframe. I just want to get the essence of that pose. And so what I want to do is make use of Alan Davis's pose. He's such a great figure artist that you can get a lot from it, but what we don't want to do is end up with a complete copy of what he's done. That's really the point of everything that we're going to be studying today. And so I've got the hand here, my shoulders here, he's got his other arm coming out here with the hand just back like this. And I'm just doing a very simple gestural drawing. The point really for me right now is absolutely not to be getting any kind of details. It really is just to be getting the essence of this pose. And I'm just going to clean straight copy it the first time just to get a feel for it. And a lot of times when I read a script and I'm a little bit at a loss for a figure, and this does happen no matter how much you draw, or if you want to do something that's a little bit different than what you kind of habitually have been doing, this is a great way to bring in new influence and try some different things. And so I'll go through a book like this and I'll find a pose that gives me something similar to what I'm looking for. And I don't generally do a full drawing of the pose exactly as drawn first, but just for the sake of clarity, I'm drawing that pose pretty well completely. Clean up the head just a little bit so it's a little bit more like a head. It doesn't need to be perfect. And there's my neck, my clavicle, and there's my body pretty well defined. And so that's my pose from Alan Davis. And so what I want to do now is I want this basic pose. I want a figure that's floating and looking nice and natural like this, but I don't want to just copy what I've got here. So I'm going to try a couple of different versions. And so I'm going to go with the same chest angle and the same pelvic angle because I think those really work. I'm going to draw in my pelvis here. And so now for my arm, I think I'm going to extend my arm out like this just a little bit, bring up my hand like this, and being able to just draw these kinds of figures yourself like this, the way that I'm doing with this arm, really comes from doing lots and lots of these. But what I'm doing now is just adding my own elements to what is a figure that otherwise would just be a copy. And so already it's different enough, but I want to do some more things with it. And so I'm actually going to bring this leg in just a little bit more, kind of cross it over the front, and then extend. This leg is actually kind of coming out toward us still just a little bit. What I want to do is just angle this back. So I've got a tube kind of going back this way. There's my knee and my other foot. I do like how he's got those feet kind of curved in. I'm going to do the same thing here again with this foot. And so I've changed my basic leg angle in the way that that's working. And now for my other hand, I'm going to bring it up just like this, tilt the hand the other way and give him a fist. It really doesn't matter. And maybe I'll turn his head down just a little bit more too. And so I'm just making these choices on top of a figure that I got from Alan Davis and I think is a very, very strong figure. And if I'm not as comfortable drawing a figure in this pose, I can do iterations like this. I'm going to do one more. And so I have a completely different figure. No one could ever say, oh, you just copied an Alan Davis figure, because it was really not at that point, but I did use it as a bit of a jumping off point. So let's do one more. And in this case, I'm actually going to bring my chest up and see the difference that that might make. And I'm going to keep the pelvis the same. I do want to keep elements of the picture that I'm drawing. Now, really, I could iterate all the way into something completely different, but sometimes it can be just helpful to give you a starting point just for a figure that really works, instead of just running ideas through your head if you're struggling. And so now I am actually going to use something more like this arm pose. There it is, my hand. My head is going to be just like this. I feel like I'm a little bit small in that chest, so let's adjust for that. I'm going to bring this arm out and then bring the hand forward like this. Now, I think let's lift this leg up higher and see what that does for us. So now I've got this leg lifted higher. I think I'll still keep this leg bent toward us just a little bit. And maybe I'll go with something that basically looks like that pose for that leg. And so there's another pose completely created using this pose as a jumping off point. And this is a really great way if you're struggling to draw something like Spider-Man or something like that, to use an artist that does it really, really well, somebody that has really great poses, and then just try different variations of your own to make it your own. Obviously, the more you do this, the more you really won't have to look at anything, but I think it's always a very good thing to be bringing in new influences like this all the time, and this is the easiest way to do this from a sketch-in stage. Before we jump into the next section, I just want to throw out a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Along with all my YouTube tutorials and live streams, I also have courses that I'm selling on my website. I've got original art for sale, and I want to be able to promote my current projects. That's why I need a quality website, and it is so essential that I can quickly and easily edit and make changes to anything that I need to on the site myself, without having to resort to a professional. I have my website almost completely rebuilt using Squarespace. From connected social media accounts, galleries of work for sale, to YouTube merch, a blog that I mean to update, and I know I never will, let's be honest here. And Squarespace gives me all the tools that I need to be able to track every element of my business online, which creates a much better experience for not only me, but also any potential customers that I might have. If you're ready to give Squarespace a try to help sell and promote your work online, head on over to squarespace.com/David Finch to save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain using code David Finch. All right, let's get on with the lesson. So now at the next stage of this process, what I want to do is take my first figure and I'm going to use another artist completely different to draw my anatomy. I'm just going to draw a cartoon at this point. And the artist I decided to use, because I'm a huge fan and he has such a dynamic anatomy, it's very different than what I do. And I thought that would be a little bit fun for me to try and do and see how much of that I can capture, is Joe Quesada. And so for this one, I'm using Guardian Devil by Joe Quesada, Kevin Smith, and Jimmy Palmiotti. This is one of my favorite books. You can see just from the cover, it's really incredible work. It's a really dynamic figure. The anatomy is really interesting. It's really well done, but it's also very stylized, something I really like. And I can take elements from that, not this picture exactly here. Maybe for something different, I certainly could, but there are all kinds of pictures in here. And to start with, when I drew these figures here, I didn't draw them with an artist in mind to look at for anatomy or anything like that. I drew them just completely cold, looking at Alan Davis, and then made the decision to use Joe Quesada afterwards, and just this one book, which is very limiting because there are only so many figures in here, and so there are some things I'll be able to use and some things that I'll just really have to make up on my own. But what I really liked about this figure is the way that he did the hip and leg placement here, and so let's try and capture that as much as I can. Now my pose is different, which is kind of the point. I don't want to just be copying this picture, but I can get a lot from his anatomy, and so I'm going to try and capture the shape of that leg. And I'm not worrying about making my pose the same as that and making the leg exactly the same, because my pose is just a little bit different, but I can get a lot from it. Working my way down the leg, his foot is a little bit covered here, and I had my foot at a bit of a different angle too. And so I'm just going to go ahead and finish it kind of my own way. Now I'm finding his knee is actually turned in just a little bit more, and my foot's turned in. So I'm going to erase that and try and capture that turned in just a little bit more, because I think it's going to help me with the anatomy I'm trying to capture on the leg that I'm drawing here. A bit of a shape here, just kind of working with the shapes that he has, using my own knowledge also, and seeing what I can get out of it. And that's my leg that I've taken from Joe Quesada, just right here. And now for the other leg, and by the way, I think I'm gonna go ahead and finish the hips a little bit here. Now the other leg, this leg is way too high. It's not really gonna work. And I went through this book, I found this picture, and I really like this leg and the way that he's got it attached and some of this structure in here. And so I'm gonna try and use some of that. And so I'm gonna go ahead right here and try and get that in. My angle is different, and so I need to draw kind of my own leg here, but I really like the way that he's constructed some of his shapes in here. And you can see I'm really not getting that close to it because it's very different from the leg that I'm drawing, but I couldn't find a leg in this book that was similar enough. And so I'm having to rely on my own drawing ability for that leg for a good portion of it, but I did get that out of it, and I'm pretty happy with that. And so now for the upper body, we're going to keep moving here. Really like the shoulder construction that he used for this shoulder here. And so I'm going to try and use some of that here. And now my arm is turned down. His arm is not turned down. His arm is turned up. And at that point, I have a couple options. I could actually just draw my own arm here, because I actually could not find an arm in this pose. Or I could actually try and draw something that's a little more similar to what he had, depending on your comfort level. And so I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to see if I can capture some of the arm here and be able to use it more effectively for reference. And I really don't have to worry about copying this pose because I'm not. I'm just taking a piece out of it and seeing if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, and it's very awkward for me. This is so different for how I would draw. I've been doing this for so many years. I just draw this stuff myself. And so trying to draw the way another artist would draw is hard, but this is how we learn. This is why when you're learning how to draw, it can take so long to draw pages. My chest is kind of coming in here, coming up to the rib cage here. I like how he's defined that. I'm gonna draw that hand in here. And there, my arm is a Joe Quesada arm that I just took from this book right here and put it onto my own figure. And altered the shape, altered the pose of my figure, but I did it to accommodate some reference that I was looking at, and I think it actually works. So I didn't have to do that. I could have just drawn my own arm, but I really wanted to use as much of this and get as much Joe Quesada into this picture as I could possibly get. And I think I'm going to use some of the shape that he has here also. And from here, we're going to move on and see what other reference I can find. And so I found this figure here. And I like how he's constructed this arm. It's different than how I've drawn my arm here, but this is really as close as I could find. And so we're going to use it, and I'm just going to alter the shape of my arm to try and match that a little bit and see if it works. And if not, we'll just have to create our own arm. And so that's my arm drawn in there. I think it works actually pretty well. It's a very different pose than what I was thinking originally, but I like it. And now we're gonna see if I can find a head that will fit for my head. But before I do that, I'm just gonna draw in. There's really no place where I could cleanly find his stomach. He tends, because it's Daredevil, it tends to be very dark this way. That's kind of the way he's lighting things. And so I'm really just gonna go ahead and draw this in my own way. All right, so I've dug around the book quite a bit, and I actually found a head that I think is gonna work pretty well for the head that I have here. And so I'm gonna go ahead and start trying to draw that in. I'm gonna use my own head placement and see if I can make that head work. He doesn't really have a neck connection that's similar to what I have, so I'm connecting my neck my own way. And this is where you really do have to have a basis in your own anatomy. Otherwise, not only will you be absolutely forever referencing every single part of your figure from other artists, but you'll also have a very difficult time assessing whether something fits or works or not. And so there's my very Joe Quesada influenced head. I'll even give him his little horns. And from here I could clean this up and do some lighting and really get this to a finish. And I'm pretty happy with that figure. It's different than what I originally had, and it's actually very different than what I would draw just on my own, but I think it really works. I'm very happy with it. And it's not a copy of any pose that he has in this book, so it really is your own figure. And now for the next stage of this process, we're gonna bring in another artist. This is another artist that's a huge favorite of mine. This is Kevin Nolan, and I'm gonna look at Kevin Nolan for some lighting and see what I can get for this figure here. And so right off the bat, I've got this figure that I think can give me quite a bit, and I'm gonna keep going through. I've got another figure here that I think I could use quite a bit, all up and through here, and I actually really like how this works. And so I think I'm just gonna go with this. And so let's just start putting this in here and see what we get from it. So I've got a shadow under my pectorals right here. His shadowing here starts to get a little confusing for me. I'm actually gonna ignore this. I'm gonna ignore some things that I think he's got a very strong central light, but then it's not reflected all the way through everywhere completely. And so I'm gonna ignore where I feel like it's not working for me and use the things that do work. And when I need to go to a different reference for different things, I'll do that. But for now, I think that this reference is gonna work for quite a bit of this figure. And this is really where you have to have a basic understanding of lighting and a sense of where things go in order to make this kind of referencing work. I think I will just make that dark. This is the way Joe Quesada had it, and I felt like it worked for that figure there. So I'm just gonna go dark. I think that'll work. The angle of my shoulder, I kind of wanna get that in there, and I'm having to make some of this up, but I can use this. It's a nice cut here. I like how he's defined some of this. So I'm gonna try and capture that. And I'm gonna leave this for, well, his hand I think actually will work too. It's a very similar hand, and so I'm gonna copy the lighting from that hand. And that actually altered my form just a little bit from what I had from Joe Quesada, but I think it really works. And I have a hard shadow here. I'm not drawing a secondary light coming in this way, so I'm just gonna close this in, just like this. But I am gonna use this detailing he has here. I think it really looks great. And I think it works with the lighting that I've got. I don't need much because I'm working at a pretty small size here. There it is. And he has this completely dark. Let's just go ahead and do that. it really works. And he's darkened all the way down through here. I don't actually want to do that. I don't think it's going to work for my lighting, and so we're not going to. I'm looking at this arm here, and I really like how he's defined in some of that, and I'm going to use it in here. I need to bear in mind that my shapes are not the same. And so I need to use elements of what he has that I can make work and ignore things that are going to kind of fight it. And this again requires you to have an understanding of anatomy as a baseline. And so there, I think that actually really works. I like how that lighting kind of came together, and it's not exactly what he had here because my arm's a little different, but it is based on it and it gave me quite a bit. I also like how he's defined this little area here, and so I want to try and do that. And so here we've got this light here. It's really got the same lighting that we're planning on using for our figure. And so I'm going to give it a try and see what we can get from this. And so my angle again is different. I need to make this conform to my anatomy, but I am going to try and use his general overall lighting pattern. So you need to be aware, I've got a cut in here, which he's also defined. It cuts up dark through here, and he has darkened this completely. So we'll just go ahead and do that. He's darkened this whole area here. And he's got another cut just here, which I don't like, and I'm not putting it in because anatomically I don't know what muscle that would be. And that's where you really have to start using your own idea of where you think things should go. Let me clean this up a little bit. I'm starting to fight with my underdrawing, but I am going to try and use as much of this knee as I can. I think it's very, very good. I like how he's got that little hook in here for his foot. I'm going to try and get that in mine, see if I can make that work for me. And I think that works pretty well. Well enough that I'm going to leave it. I want to find this as my second portion of stomach here, and then my lower here. All right. So we're going to move on and see if we can find something for this leg right here. As it stands, I've got this here. Actually, I think I can use quite a bit of it. And so let me cut in up through here. Joe Quesada had some really interesting shapes that I liked. I don't want to lose those, so I'm going to make sure to put that back in there right here. And he's got a nice looking cut here. And I know that I've got muscle in through here, so that works for me. And cut under here the way he has under this muscle here. And then for the knee, I'm just gonna go dark. He doesn't have the same knee, but I think that's gonna work. And now based on the lighting, I know that I want the inside of this hand to be dark. And so I'm gonna start to just put some of this together myself. Little cut up in through here. And that little cut up in through here, this is something that I picked up from doing this from different artists, all sorts of different artists over the years. And you'll find as you do this, you'll pick up tricks and you'll pick up different ways to put lighting in doing this, and it'll just start to become your own. So I have a couple more areas. I've got this arm here, and I've got his head that we're still gonna light, and we'll see what we can find in here. I have something very similar here, and I think this is gonna work for me. I don't wanna do a double lighting, so I'll just cut that out. But what I will do is draw in my shadow through here. I like how he's defined his elbow differently, and so let me draw that in. Draw in some of the way that he's kind of cut that down here. It's got a few interesting cuts through here and striations that kind of come through here. And I think that's going to work for me for that arm. That's really all I need. And I got it all from here. Before I move on, I know that my head, based on the lighting that I have, is going to cast a shadow this way, which is going to obscure this, but I need to be at least fairly consistent. And so let's just draw that in. I don't really need to reference that from another artist. There's some areas where I think it's just easier just to throw in what you know is already going to be there. And so there we go. And after going through the whole book, I found that this head is going to give me the closest thing to what I'm looking for. It's going to take some work because my proportions are different, but I can use quite a bit of it. And so I don't have an eyebrow. I'm going to ignore that. And I want that eye to be open, so I'll also ignore that. But I do like how he's got that little shadow underneath here. So we'll get that established in there. I like how he's defined just a bit of a nostril there. And then the shadow from the nose. You can see just a little hit light just inside that nose right there, just for the other nostril. I'm gonna give him just a little bit of shadow right in there. Now for his mouth, drawing a heavy shadow for the upper lip, the way he has defined here. And then my teeth, kind of see in here. And my lower lip. I'm going to define the same way he has his defined. And I'm drawing a different face, so it's not looking the same, but it's giving me a lot, and it's working. I'm happy with this. And I've also got a shadow down the side of the face here. Let's get that in there. I know I've got shadows coming from his horns. There we go, and I'll shadow the side of his head. And so here we go. This is a drawing that I Frankenstein together from multiple different sources. I got the basic pose from Alan Davis, which I worked with a little bit, and then I got my anatomy and altered the pose a little bit from Joe Quesada, and then I got my lighting from Kevin Nolan. And this is a very extreme example of doing this. I really tried to pick up as much reference from each artist as I possibly could and then make it work, and I also limited myself to just one book from each artist. And so once I had established the figure, I really had to find reference that could fit as well as possible, and that is what you will run into when you're drawing figures of your own unless you just copy full figures, which is obviously what you want to avoid. This fundamentally is how you can use reference from multiple different artists and decide that you like the lighting of one artist and the anatomy of another artist and mix those things together into a style of your own, and also how you can make your own work much more confident by using the work of other artists without directly just copying.